It all started with a Korean web novel. The title was 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, and it was unlike anything else. It was incredibly long-running for 10 whole years with over 3,000 chapters. At the beginning, plenty of people started reading it. But as the years went by and the story got more and more complicated, readers just gave up. By the very end, only one single reader remained. His name was Kim Dokja. Now, Dokja was just a regular, lonely guy. He'd had a tough life. Since he was a kid, whenever things got bad, whether he was being bullied at school, struggling through college, or feeling the crushing stress of his job, this novel was his only escape. It gave him comfort. The story followed a hero named Yoo Jong-yuk. Jong-yuk had a special power called regression. Basically, every time he died, he could go back in time to try and save the world all over again. Dokja loved this. Seeing Jong-yuk struggle and keep fighting gave him the courage to get through his own boring, everyday life. On the very day the novel ended, Dokja was sitting on the subway heading home from work. As he finished the final chapter, he felt a wave of sadness. The ending was just so tragic. The hero was the only one left alive. Everyone else had died. Dokja was so upset that he actually left a comment for the author, telling them the ending was terrible. To his surprise, the author actually replied. The author thanked him and said, "You are the reason I was able to finish this novel. Thank you. And if you don't like the ending, you can write your own." Dokja didn't really understand what that meant. But then, right at 7:30 p.m., the train suddenly shook. The whole world changed in an instant. The lights flickered, phone signals vanished, and a strange voice announced that the free service of the world had ended and the paid service was beginning. Everyone was terrified and confused. Then, a small creature appeared out of thin air. It called itself a Dokkaebi. Dokja recognized it instantly from the book. The Dokkaebi told the passengers that their peaceful lives were over and they now had to prove they deserved to live. People thought it was some kind of sick joke. To prove he was serious, the creature exploded a man's head right then and there. Panic erupted. The Dokkaebi told them this was real and gave them their first mission. In the next 10 minutes, kill any living thing, just one. If you fail, I will kill you all. Some people just froze. Others went crazy and started attacking each other to survive. But Dokja stayed completely calm. He realized this was exactly how the novel started. Since he was the only one who had read the whole book, he knew exactly what was coming. He knew the mission said to kill a living thing, but it didn't have to be a person. He spotted a boy nearby holding a box of insects. Dokja quickly went over, took the box, crushed an insect for himself, and gave some to a coworker standing nearby. Dokja was the very first person to finish the mission. The system announced he'd earned 300 coins. In this new world, coins are everything. You use them to buy gear and power. As the chaos slowed down, Dokja saw a young man attacking an old woman. He recognized him as Nam Woon, a total psychopath from the novel. Dokja wanted to help the woman, but he knew he was too weak to fight Nam Woon as he was. Then he remembered he could use his coins to buy strength. He opened his status menu, pumped his coins into his strength stat, and suddenly felt his body become light and powerful. With his new strength, he easily beat Nam Woon. He tried to save the old woman by giving her an insect to kill, but she just couldn't do it in time. The timer hit 0. Only Dokja, his co-worker, and the little boy survived that carriage. Everyone else was killed instantly by the system. The train was a graveyard. The Dokkaebi came back, looking delighted by all the blood. He explained that constellations, beings from the stars, were watching all of this like a reality TV show and enjoying it. The train eventually stopped on a bridge, but suddenly a giant sea monster jumped out of the water and smashed the bridge to pieces. Everyone was falling to their deaths. Dokja and the survivors managed to force the train doors open, grabbed the boy, and ran across the crumbling wreckage. They thought they were in the clear, but then the dead passengers turned into zombies and started chasing them. Just when it looked like the end, Dokja looked back. There he was, Yoo Jong-hyuk, the hero of the novel, fighting off the zombies with ease. When Jong-hyuk saw Dokja's group, he was stunned. Remember, he's a regressor. He had lived this day many times before in past lives, and in every single version of history, nobody ever survived that train. He grabbed Dokja and held him over the edge of the bridge, right above the open mouth of the sea monster. "Who are you? How did you survive?" Jong-hyuk demanded. Dokya couldn't exactly say, "I read about you in a book, so he lied and said he was a prophet who could see the future." Jung-yuk didn't believe him. He said, "If that's true, use your power to survive this," and he dropped Dokya right into the monster's mouth. Dokja fell into the monster's stomach. It was dark, and the stomach acid was starting to rise, ready to burn him alive. But Dokja wasn't panicking. He knew from the book that the Dokaibi had a hidden channel here. He called out to the creature, saying, "I know you want a good show for your viewers. I'll make this interesting, and we'll both get lots of coins." The Dokaibi agreed to a deal. Dokja used his coins to buy a special weapon made of a horn and killed the monster from the inside. He cut his way out, earned a massive amount of coins, and even traded for a skill called Unbroken Faith, knowing it would be a game changer later. He put on a mask to hide his face and headed for the nearest safe zone. On the way, he saw some thugs attacking a woman. He recognized her as Heewon, a character who was supposed to die early in the story, but Dokja decided he was going to change the script. He saved her, and Heewon, grateful and impressed, decided to join him. They made it to a station where other survivors were gathered, but the place was run by a corrupt man who was basically using the weak as bait for monsters just to earn more coins. When the man tried to bully Dokja into giving up his coins, Dokja refused. The others thought he was being selfish, but Dokja knew better. He knew giving them coins wouldn't save them in the long run. Instead, he promised to open an escape tunnel for everyone. Dokja put together a small team: the soldier, Heewon, his co-worker, and the little boy who discovered he could actually talk to insects. They headed into the dark tunnels and ran into a ground rat monster. It was a nightmare. The monster used a poison that made everyone hallucinate their worst, most painful memories. The soldier saw his fallen comrades. Heewon saw her attackers. Everyone was paralyzed by grief and fear. But Dokja had a skill called the Fourth Wall that protected his mind from emotions. He was the only one who didn't feel the fear. He shouted at them, breaking the spell, and the team fought back. Dokja bought white Pure Star energy, making his weapon glow, and together they took the monster down. In a treasure chest nearby, Dokja found a broken sword handle. Everyone else thought it was junk, but Dokja knew better. He used his Unbroken Faith skill on it, and it transformed into a blade of light, a literal lightsaber that could cut through anything. They went back to the station, exposed the evil leader, and Heewon took care of him, freeing the survivors. But there was no time to celebrate. They had to get to Chungmuro Station for the next level. Chungmuro was a mess. The mission was Green Zone. To survive the night, you had to be standing inside a green square on the floor, but there weren't enough squares for everyone. A landlord character had taken control of the zones and was charging people coins just to stand in them. If you couldn't pay, you were left to the monsters. There, Dokja met a high school girl who was a student of Jung-yuk's. She told them Jung-yuk had already left to fight monsters alone. Dokja didn't want to fight the landlord yet, so he just paid the rent. But the Dokaibi, wanting more drama for the viewers, made the game even harder by reducing the number of green zones. It was a trick to get people to kill each other. Dokja realized that the only way to win this unfair game wasn't to fight for a room, but to destroy the room itself so the rules wouldn't apply. But it was incredibly risky. He decided the best way to end the scenario was to kill the boss, a terrifying dragon. In the original novel, this dragon was where Jung-yuk usually died and had to restart his life. Dokja knew that if Jung-yuk died here, the whole world would reset, and Dokja and his new friends would simply cease to exist. He had to save the hero. Dokja's team entered the arena and found Jung-hyuk losing badly. He was injured and ready to give up and die. But Dokja screamed, "You can't give up, Jung-hyuk!" The dragon breathed fire, but Dokja used an item to absorb the flames. His team jumped in with perfect timing. The soldier blocked the attacks, the co-worker used magical threads to tie the dragon down, and the high school girl attacked from above. Seeing them fight so hard gave Jung-hyuk his hope back. He stood up and joined the battle. Dokja knew the dragon's heart. Its core was the only way to kill it. But he also knew that whoever broke the core would die in the explosion. In the novel, the hero always let someone else die. Dokja hated that. He decided he was going to be the kind of hero he wanted to read about. He ran at the dragon, plunged his blade of light into its chest, and shattered the core. There was a massive explosion. Jung-yuk watched in total shock as Dokja was swallowed by the light. The dragon turned to ash. The level was cleared. His friends were devastated, crying because they thought he was gone, but as the smoke cleared, Dokja walked out of the ruins, alive. He had a secret skill called King of No Killing that let him come back to life one time. Jong-hyuk just stared at him. He realized Dokja was a complete mystery, someone who wasn't in the original story, someone who was actually better than him. This man knew the future, but instead of sacrificing others, he sacrificed himself. Dokja knew the journey was only going to get harder from here, but looking at his team, he knew they could win. And as the sun rose on the survivors, Dokja and his group stood together, ready for whatever the next chapter would bring.